Hey guys, Jan here from Online-Tabletop. Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition basically consists of two parts, the role-playing part and the combat part. Today I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on how to play tactically within the combat part of Dungeons & Dragons.
So, what's the plan?
Right.
Tip 1. Know your enemy.
Feigivar, Dinalang, Anurak.
Legolas here knows that the Uruk-hai's armor is weak at the neck and under the arms. This is exactly the type of information you want to share with your party members. There are class features that let you find out specific information about the enemy, such as the rogue mastermind's insightful manipulator or the fighter battlemaster's know your enemy. But there are also the knowledge skills. Rolling an arcana check might give you information about a certain magical creature or about what type of spell it's casting. Rolling a nature check might give you information about beasts and animals. Rolling a religion check might give you information about demons, undead and celestial creatures. Rolling a history check might give you information about local creatures or details about ancient battles. As a dungeon master, make sure you set a correct DC. Try to be immersive in your descriptions. A bad example is, the skeleton is vulnerable to bludgeoning damage. A good example of this, you think that using a weapon such as a hammer or a mace might be more effective against this skeleton than trying to pierce it with a spear or slash it with a sword. Tip 2. Ask if an enemy is wounded.
It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Sometimes you want to know if your opponent is hurt, so you can take the appropriate action. As a dungeon master, you can describe this by saying, the creature looks okay, or by saying, it's about halfway dead, or by saying, yeah, it's almost dead. But I feel we can describe this in a better way. 4th edition introduced the term bloodied. If a creature is bloodied, it means that it's equal or lower than half of its hit points. This is a good start, but let's add some more descriptions to make the combat come to life. At full health, you can describe it by saying, the creature has no signs of injury. At 3/4 health, you can say, the creature has minor injuries that do not seem to bother it very much. At half health, you can say, the creature looks injured. There are traces of blood and wounds, but the creature is still fighting strong. At 1/4 health, you can say, the creature is heavily injured. The creature is angry and wounded, and it seems to have a hard time keeping up the fight. When it just has a few hit points left, you can say, the creature is severely injured. It is staggering and barely standing on its feet. Tip 3. Only fools rush in. When you roll initiative, usually the first thing on your mind is launching an attack. However, sometimes it is better to find a more tactical position. You can retreat a little and find a choke point such as a door or a hallway. If you found a trap in a dungeon, you can use it to your advantage and let an enemy trigger it. You can also ready an action. For example, you can say, if I see the orc coming through the doorway, I will fire my crossbow at it. One thing to note is, as a dungeon master, we put a lot of effort in creating an encounter. Sometimes we use minis and battle maps. If you decide to retreat or move in such a way that the whole preparation of the dungeon master is rendered useless, it might be better to discuss your plan with the group and the dungeon master first, not only for the dungeon master's sake, but also for the pace of the game. Tip 4. Know your positions. Let's talk about positions at the start of combat. In Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, you can categorize your characters in 3 different roles during combat. The tank has a high armor class and a lot of hit points. It is his job to protect the weaker party members. Position yourself in such a way that the enemy has to move through your threatened range to get to the others. If there are multiple tanks, keep 10 feet distance between you, so that there's no way for the enemy to move through unless he opens himself up to an opportunity attack from one of the tanks. The ranged combatant has a lower armor class and less hit points than the tank. They should position in such a way that the enemy has a hard time reaching them. The melee combatant has an average armor class and hit points. Their position is behind the tanks, catching the enemies that have been able to pass by. Try to position in such a way that a ranged combatant still have a clear shot at the enemy. Tip 5. Control the battlefield. The next step is to gain control. The way to do this is to take out enemies as quick as possible. When there are multiple enemies, focus your damage. This is because a creature with 1 hit point does the same amount of damage as when it would have full hit points. So take them out one by one. At this point, use your controlling spells and abilities. This can take out one or multiple enemies from battle. If the enemy has creatures with controlling spells and abilities, focus on them first. Tip 6. Flanking. Many D&D players and dungeon masters like to use the optional flanking rule in their game. The rule is, when a creature and at least one of its allies are adjacent to an enemy and on opposite sides or corners of the enemy space, they flank that enemy, and each of them has advantage on melee attacks against that enemy. As with many of these tactics, flanking is especially useful if you play with grids and battle maps. It is more difficult to employ when you play Theater of the Mind. I personally really like this rule. It makes the battle more tactical. The downside to using this rule is that other abilities that give your players advantage feel less powerful and useful. Be warned, if you use the flanking rule, the enemies can flank you too. Tip 7. Break up your movement and use cover. In 5th edition, you can break up your movement. This means that you can jump out of cover, use a ranged attack or a spell, and return to the position with cover. Cover can mean the difference between life and death in many situations. Half cover means you have a +2 to armor class and dexterity saving throws. 3/4 cover means that you have a +5 to armor class and dexterity saving throws. And total cover means that you can't be targeted by a ranged attack or a ranged attack spell at all. You can also use creatures as half cover, so if arrows are flying around, don't be afraid to stand behind your tank. Also keep in mind that enemies can use you as half cover. When positioning yourself, make sure you give your ranged party members a clear shot at the target. Tip 8. Area of effect.
I give you the werewolf!
There are creatures that have area of effect abilities. If you are fighting such creatures, it is wise to spread out so that you don't become an easy target. If you have party members that regularly use certain area of effect spells and abilities, remember their distances. This is useful when you have buffs such as Bardic Inspiration or the Paladin's Auras. Communicate with your spellcasters before you engage a group of enemies. Sometimes a spellcaster wants to use an area of effect spell such as Fireball, but if you move in, they can't cast it without hurting you. If you know multiple languages, you might be able to communicate in some secret form with your party members if the enemies don't speak that same language. Tip 9. Know your party members.
My God, what just happened?
If you hang out with the same people for a while, you learn their habits. This is also true for a party of adventurers. Learn their abilities. There are some type of characters that can only really shine if their party members are aware of their mechanics. Things like sneak attack, characters having reach, or having certain feats such as Sentinel or Polearm Master. Some spellcasters can change their spells after a long rest. If you do so, make sure you discuss it with the party. I remember one of my players jumping from a ledge, waiting for the Featherfall spell from the wizards, and then learning that the wizard didn't prepare the spell that day. Tip 10. Actions in combat. If you want a creature to stop moving around, you can grapple it. Grappled creature can still fight each other, but you prevent the grappled creature from moving around. You can also move a grappled creature at half of your speed. You can shove a creature. You can either shove it into a certain direction or you can push it prone. If you attack a prone creature, you get advantage on your melee attack roll, but you can also shove it 5 feet into a pool of lava or from a high cliff, for example. If you find yourselves in a bad position, you can choose to disengage. This uses up your action, but prevents the enemy from making attacks of opportunity against you. Sometimes you need to run a big distance to get to a better position. You can take the dash action and basically double your movement. If you are protecting your party members and you are in a very defensive position, you can use the dodge action to try and avoid attacks. You get advantage on dex saves and enemies get disadvantage on attacking you. If you are unsure on what to do in combat, you can always use the help action. You give another player advantage on an attack. This is extremely useful when there is a party member that can deal a lot of damage in one turn. The rogue will be especially happy because it will give him sneak attack damage. Tip 11. Feats.
Yeah, I didn't feel that.
Having a reach weapon in 5th edition is less interesting than in previous editions. Your rogue won't be happy when you decide to take a reach weapon because you need to have an ally adjacent to the enemy in order to get sneak attack damage. However, there are 2 feats that make reach weapons a much more interesting choice. The Sentinel feat. When you have a successful opportunity attack, the target's speed becomes 0. You get an opportunity attack even if the enemy takes a disengage action. When a creature within 5 feet of you makes an attack against another target, you can use your reaction to make an attack against that creature. The Polearm Master feat. You can hit the enemy with the back of your polearm. Creatures provoke an attack of opportunity when they enter your reach, while you are equipped with a polearm. Grappling by itself isn't super great, since it only keeps the enemy from moving around. However, if you take the Grappler feat, you get advantage on the attack rolls against the creature that you are grappling, and you can also make another grappling check to pin the enemy down. You and the creature are both restrained. This means that your party gets advantage on attack rolls against this creature, and the creature gets disadvantage on its attack rolls. This is especially useful if you are fighting a single enemy. Lucky lets you roll an extra d20 on an attack roll, ability check or saving throw. You can choose which of the d20s is used. It is basically a form of advantage that you get 3 times per day until you finish a long rest. You can also use it on an enemy's attack roll against you. So when an enemy crits you, you can decide to change the attack roll into the one that you roll. It's a lifesaver. Shield Master is one of my favorite. It lets you shove an enemy with a bonus action. If you use this bonus action before your regular action, you can try to knock it prone and give you and any other melee party members advantage on your attack rolls. Besides that, it also gives your shield's AC as a bonus to your dex saves. And if you make a dex save to take half damage and you succeed, you can use your reaction to take no damage at all. Mobile is great for hit and run tactics. It increases your speed by 10 feet. If you dash, difficult terrain doesn't cost you extra movement on that turn. And best of the 3 is when you make a melee attack against a creature, you don't provoke opportunity attacks from that creature for the rest of the turn, whether you hit or not. It is true that a rogue can achieve something similar with the cunning action, but a rogue with a mobile feat can actually decide to move away and still use its bonus action to dash or hide. The Sharpshooter feat allows you to use the long range of your weapon without getting disadvantage. And your weapon ignores half and 3/4 cover. This allows you to stay out of danger while still being able to use your ranged weapon very effectively. You don't have to worry about party members blocking your view, and you can shoot down enemies from great distance. It also feels very rewarding to be able to shoot down an enemy that is running away for his life. Mage Slayer can be used to cancel those annoying concentration spells. You get a reaction attack if a creature within 5 feet of you casts a spell. When you damage a creature that is concentrating on a spell, it gets disadvantage on its concentration check. and you have advantage on saving throws from spells cast by creatures within 5 feet of you. Warcaster gives you advantage on your concentration check when taking damage. You can perform the spell even if you have a weapon or a shield in your hand, and you can use your reaction to cast a spell instead of making an opportunity attack. The last tip, tip 12, useful class abilities. The fighter subclass Battlemaster gives you a crazy amount of tactical combat maneuvers to choose from. Don't forget that many of these maneuvers can be made with a weapon attack, so you can do it with a ranged weapon as well. The Barbarian subclass, Path of the Totem Warrior, is really cool. The Bear Totem gives you the following ability. While raging, you have resistance to all damage except psychic damage. This turns your Barbarian into an amazing tank. The Totem of the Wolf gives you the following ability. While you are raging, your friends have advantage on melee attacks against creatures within 5 feet of you that are hostile. This means free advantage on creatures nearby. Your party's rogue will be very happy about this. The Monk's Stunning Strike and Way of the Open Hand can both stun and knock an enemy prone. It's a great way to gain control on the battlefield. My favorite class ability is the Wizard School of Divination Portent. Starting at level 2, when you choose this school, glimpses of the future begin to press in on your awareness. When you finish a long rest, roll 2 d20s and record the numbers rolled. You can replace any attack roll, saving throw or ability check made by you or a creature that you can see with one of these foretelling rolls. You must choose to do so before the roll, and you can only replace a roll in this way once per turn. This means that if you have someone in your party using extremely powerful ability or spell, you can have the player use the very high roll that you made earlier, or have the enemy use the very low roll as saving throw. Let's say you rolled a 1 on your portent, you can use a polymorph on a big bad evil guy using your pre-rolled die as its save, turning it into a chicken. That's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you want to support my channel, you can like and subscribe. This allows me to make more of these kind of videos in the future. Thank you very much, and bye bye.